the saviors. You told me that soon you'd be the one following me.
We have Maggie saying before we fought the saviors, you said that you were going to be the one that's going to follow me, or something to that effect. And if you remember, that's part of the season 8 premiere. We had Rick saying, after all this, I'm going to be following you. I don't know how many of you still remember that, but that's what Maggie is referring to here. Maggie says, but you didn't. And that goes back to what Rick decided to do at the end of the war. He did not kill Negan. Maggie wanted to kill Negan. And of course that created a lot of tension between these two characters. This tension wasn't really highlighted in the comics, but in the show they're definitely highlighting that. And that goes back to what happened at the end of All Out War during the season 8 finale, when we had Maggie talking to Jesus and Daryl, telling them, we're gonna make Rick see that he was wrong about not killing Negan. There's definitely gonna be some sort of internal struggle between the characters that may have been very close previously. I don't think it's gonna get to a point where it's like a civil war or anything, but at the same time, I do believe that there is gonna be some sort of tension that's gonna come to blows at some point.
Because there wasn't so much follow. That changes now.
And Maggie says, I couldn't quite catch what she was saying before, but she says that changes now. We have another dialogue from Negan saying, you think you got all of this on lock, talking to Rick about you think that you're gonna grow, you think everything is gonna be good. Now, one thing I do want to mention, this is them camping out on their way to Washington, D.C., I think. Everyone that we do see here are the people that were also there in the government building when they were trying to get the wagon down. Going back to what Negan was saying, it's going to come back in a little bit, but he's basically saying that something is going to go wrong, and I want you to come back and tell me about the day that it goes wrong, so I can tell you that you were wrong and I was right. And that goes back to what kind of a person Negan is. He's still a confident guy. He still thinks he's in charge, like Rick says. Well, we have Michonne talking to Maggie here. Michonne says, we have to start making some rules. I'm not sure what this is referring to here. Maybe some people aren't following orders. Maybe that's what Michonne is saying, that they need to put out some rules so that people follow orders. We have this shot of Rosita. I think she brings out a gun and gives it to someone, and it seems like they have this sign out sheet for the guns, and that goes back to the shortage of not only the guns but also the ammo and everything. We have this shot here. Now this is the exact location when I was saying that it's maybe a central location where they go to gather and go to the communities. We have HQ, and it's pointed to the left. I don't know what HQ is. Maybe this is the headquarters that they're at. And then Oceanside on the other direction, Alexandria on the other direction, Sanctuary, and Toledo. I don't know what Toledo is. I don't know what that means. I noticed it when I was reacting to the trailer, but you know, all of these are basically the different communities. Maybe Toledo is the hilltop. I'm not sure why it would be called Toledo. Maybe HQ is the hilltop. We have this shot of Rot and Laura. If you remember, those were the two lieutenants from the Sanctuary, from the Saviors. We have Rick in the background. So it seems like these two characters are going to be with them now, because it doesn't look like they're at the Sanctuary. Maybe because they're fighters, they are with the other fighters and the other soldiers. Maybe that's what it is. But the other thing that I want to touch on is that one of these has to be the new leader of the Saviors, because there's really nobody else around. Dwight kind of left. Negan is in a cell. There's nobody else that's like a lieutenant or used to be a lieutenant that could be taking charge. So it has to be one of these two. And one more thing, the guy that we did see at the Sanctuary talking to Rick, when Rick was saying that we're going to make sure Sanctuary has what it needs to stay on its feet, that character might be John from the comics, and John is going to become an important character later on. So keep your eyes open for that character for non-comic readers and even for comic readers, because he might become an important character later on. And we have in the dialogue Michonne's discussion with Maggie that this is happens when you follow orders, and this is what happens when you don't follow orders. And it kind of connects to what we have here with Daryl fighting some guy. I don't know who these are. I think they might be saviors. They might be characters from other communities, but it seems like maybe they didn't follow orders, and maybe Daryl is there to put them in their place and make them follow orders. And we have Carol walking out saying, Daryl, stop it, trying to control the situation. We have some dialogue from Daryl saying the small group that we used to have before, or that we started with, the Atlanta group, if you remember, we can do anything together. Carol, Daryl, Rick, maybe some of the others, and even Maggie. Even though she wasn't part of the Atlanta group, she still joined them pretty early on. We have Rick talking to Daryl, saying it's on us to see what we can do to make it work. Maybe this is right after Daryl's fight with that guy, and maybe Rick is trying to say that that's not the right way. We need to find the right way to make things happen. We have this shot of Henry hitting this guy and he falls to the ground. That's kind of silly because the guy's a huge guy. I don't think he would fall from a hit from this little kid. But that aside, that's a nitpick. That aside, that's the same stick that Morgan gave Henry, so that's pretty cool. And then we have this shot also of Aaron fighting some guy. Again, this is probably a group of people that aren't following orders, and there's some sort of internal struggle or internal conflict. We have Aaron fighting the guy, we have Daryl fighting another guy, and everybody else is kind of watching. Now this seems to be another spot, so it's not the same spot that Daryl was seen fighting the guy in the previous shot. So it seems like this is going to be repeating, that Daryl is going to continually have these fights with people.
We don't know if they're ever going to forgive each other, Rick.
We have Michonne telling Rick, we don't know if they're ever going to forgive each other, Rick. Who is Michonne talking about? Them not forgiving each other. The one that kind of hits you in the face is maybe Negan and Maggie, but that's not a two-way thing. Maggie hasn't forgiven Negan, will never forgive Negan probably, but I don't think it's the other way around. So that kind of doesn't make sense. So who is Michonne talking about? One thing that I just realized, when we were talking about the conversation with Rick and Negan and the talks that they have, a part of the talks that Rick and Negan have in the show is the talks that Carl and Negan had in the comics. So it wasn't all Rick and Negan from the comics. In the comics, we had moments where Negan and Rick were having the conversation, and then some moments where Negan and Carl were having a conversation in the cell. So they gave all of that, it looks like they gave all of that to Rick and Negan in the show, which is because they killed Carl. And it seems like they're gonna kill Rick as well. But just staying on top of things here, maybe she's talking about the soldiers at the sanctuary, the saviors, and the other people, the other survivors. We have this shot of them walking inside the sanctuary. We have Michonne, we have Ezekiel, we have Rick, and some other members. Saviors, save us. We are still Negan. So it seems like there are still some people at the sanctuary that are still loyal to Negan, that still want to have that lifestyle. And maybe that creates its own conflict, not only within the sanctuary, but maybe it gets out. Maybe the group of people that Aaron and Daryl are fighting are one of those peoples that are still loyal to Negan. These, I'm pretty sure, are saviors. I remember seeing these saviors before. So Carol has the weapon pointed at them. They do the same thing. So the saviors seems like still are gonna be a problem. Now, something like this happened in the comics, but it didn't happen immediately after all that war. There was some time in between. But I think because Rick is gonna leave or exit or whatever, or Andrew Lincoln is gonna exit in season 9, they're bringing that story in a little bit earlier. I think that's what this is about. The part from the story in the comics where the saviors are still a threat. We have Father Gabriel here with a blind eye, so it seems like one of his eyes is definitely blinded. Now, I don't know what that image was that he was looking at, or what that painting was, or the drawing was. It looks like Call from the comics, honestly, but I don't know what it's about exactly. Negan continuing to say, and it will. So when everything goes to shit, and it will. Make sure you come back and tell me all about that date. So Negan is sure that things are gonna go wrong, that things are gonna go bad. And he wants Rick to come back and tell him about that date, and so he could tell Rick that he was wrong, that Negan was right. So he could basically shove it in his face. But we did see a quick shot of Maggie here stabbing someone. Now, she could be stabbing a walker, she could be stabbing one of the people that are causing problems, or she could possibly be stabbing someone else from the hilltop that used to be in charge, Gregory. That happened in the comics, something like this, not exactly Michonne, not exactly Maggie stabbing Gregory or anything, but a conflict or tension between Maggie and Gregory. We have continuously seen that ever since Gregory was introduced and Maggie went to the hilltop. We have Anne here with this walker. Now it's interesting because the walker has a necklace. I don't know if you've seen that necklace before. I don't know what Anne is doing or Jadis is doing, but it seems like they're doing something interesting with Anne or Jadis as well. This is the sanctuary, and these are the crops that are dying and everything that we did see earlier on. And we have Arot and Laura, I think, putting a walker up in chains. Maybe a scarecrow of some sort. Whatever kind of a scarecrow in this world you can have, a walker is the best one, I think. We did see the crows in the beginning as well, so it kind of matches if you think about it that way as well. We have this shot. I think this might be the image that kills Daryl and Carol shippers, because Carol and Daryl are getting close. They are embracing each other in a way. So if you're a shipper, you may be getting what you wanted. We have this shot of an injured Rick. I think this is at the bridge. It might even be when the bridge falls. We have Rick on the ground. Everyone's running towards something. We have the helicopter here. Very interesting. So we know the helicopter is gonna come. It's highlighted in the poster. They've been teasing it in season 7 and 8. So it seems like we're finally maybe getting some answers about what the helicopter is. And I think it might be directly related to why they go to Washington, D.C. We have this shot, which is pretty cool. Daryl and Rick on the bike together. The bros together on the bike, which is pretty cool. We have Jadis going back to the junkyard here, which is interesting. I think that's probably when she sees the helicopter again. So that's probably related to her story and, you know, the helicopter coming back into play. We have this final warning. Very interesting, not sure who put that up. That kind of goes back to the internal struggle, because at the moment, they don't have an outside threat. So whatever is happening with them fighting each other or writing these threatening messages, it must be internal. We have this shot of the savior, I think, and Carol. I hope nothing happens to Carol. I think Daryl might come and save her. We have this shot, very interesting. Seems like Daryl and Rick are ready to fight again. We had them fighting once. Looks like they might be doing the same thing again. Daryl is all like, come at me. Rick as well. So that's going to be interesting to see whether this is another instance of Daryl and Rick fighting. Daryl kills 2 walkers in a badass way here. We have this shot of Maggie fighting Gregory. Gregory is not going to be happy with Maggie being a leader, so he's going to try to overthrow her. That obviously creates some problems. We have this badass scene of the conversation between Rick and Daryl says we're on the same team, and Rick says, well, you tell me, are we? So it seems like there's going to be that kind of conflict between Rick and Daryl as well. We do know that it's coming because they kind of showed that at the end of the season, or they hinted at it. And also we did see a few scenes where it seems like maybe Daryl and Rick are fighting each other. So it's going to be very interesting to see what this leads to. And then we get to the introduction of the new group of people that we're gonna see, Magna's group from the comics. So we have this new character, Luke. He kind of looks like Eugene, just putting it out there. We have this character here, I think this is Magna, so this group is her group, so she's the leader of this group, probably. We have Connie here from the comics, who is also part of Magna's group. And we have Father Gabriel here, and it seems like he's maybe in charge of recruiting new people. We have Yumiko also here, who's another character from Magna's group. And I think this is taken straight from the scene from the comics, because in the comics, when All Out War is done, we're introduced to the new beginning through the eyes of these characters. And I think this is that moment. So I think that maybe this is the first time we do see these characters. And this is part of the same sequence of scenes from the comics where they come across a herd of walkers and they're saved by Jesus and some of the other survivors. We also have this shot here. So there's a herd of walkers that this group, Magnus group, is trying to deal with. Jesus and the others are there to save them. They save them. They bring them back to the hilltop, which I think where this is. But they put a hood on their head because they don't want them to know where they're going, just in case they're bad people. And I think something like that happened in the comics. So that's a direct story that they're bringing from the comics. We have this shot here of Magna with a knife. It seems like maybe Magna can't trust these people. And that's basically the end of the trailer. This takes us to the epic ending of this trailer, which directly connects to the Whispers. I will put images for you so you can actually see how this directly connects to the Whispers. But this is taken straight from a scene from the comics where we have two characters. I think in this case it's Rosita, but in the comics it's different. Having to hide under a hill. And there's a herd of walkers passing. As you can see, I think this is Daryl and Rosita. I might be wrong. In the comics, of course, it's two different characters, but it has the same effect. And if you take a look at the image I have showing, you can see it's the exact same scene. There's no rain like in the comics, which I'm kind of disappointed about, but it's the same exact scene. And I'm glad that they showed just enough. They didn't reveal anything here. They showed just enough for comic readers to know the Whispers are coming, for us to get excited, but also not reveal too much for non-comic readers, or even for comic readers, not give it away and basically spoil that scene, you know what I mean, in the trailer. And we have them kind of noticing something might not be right, something is off. They don't really show what might be off, which is great, but something is not right. And Daryl notices that here, which is pretty cool. And I love that they're putting mud on their face to match exactly what happens in the comics. And that's basically the end of the trailer. This was a very long breakdown, but there was a lot of stuff to talk about for this trailer, which I did my best to get to everything. But That's basically it for the trailer breakdown. I hope you enjoyed. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video. If you like what you see, press like, subscribe for more content, and press the bell button to receive notifications for future uploads. Like the Facebook page of this channel to join our Walking Dead community. Join us live every Friday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time for a Q&A session. See you all there.